I was talking about my parenting skills, Jay. That I'm a very competitive person, even with my kids playing Candyland and running in a race. Or how did you treat your son in playing basketball and letting him win or be in the game?
I don't remember actually letting him win, but we didn't play all that much together. We might have played horse. What I do remember is we went to a father-son camp one time. That Skip Prosser was a really close friend of mine, and he asked me. I did a favor for him, and he asked me, "Hey, bring your son to my father-son camp." So I did it, and when we were competing in these father-son events, you're with a bunch of dads that frankly weren't in the best of shape. And so I was trying to I kind of took it easy on some guys because I didn't want to see some of my friends have a heart attack or something. And my kid jumped me. I mean, he was so mad that I wasn't going full blast. And I'm like, dude, relax. And when a kid, you know how it is, when a kid thinks winning a camp is the most important thing in the world. I was like, man, I just want to get out of here without getting injured. That's my goal.
Did you have a hard time turning it off, though, when you were done playing basketball?
Yeah, I did a little bit. I played overseas for a few years, and that's kind of the hard part about this job, if there is a hard part to it, is that there's no competitive side to it. I mean, you want to do a good job and everything, and you hope you do, but you go to game. I go to game after game after game, and you don't lose, but you don't win either. So I have to put it into some other things, and you hope you don't get take it too far, but. I don't play basketball anymore. I quit probably 10 years ago and quit completely. Like, I don't shoot around. I don't do any of it. And it was primarily because a lot of my friends that I played with in college or overseas or whatever, they were still playing, and they'd tear an Achilles and be out for a year, couldn't drive because of wearing a boot or something like that. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to do that.
But also, you coached for a little while. What made you realize that maybe you didn't want that lifestyle or that as a career?
Well, I did want it. I was a grad assistant for 3 years for Coach K at Duke from 1990, 91, 92. And each one of those years, Duke was in the NCAA championship game. It was kind of like Disneyland for learning how to do this. But when I got engaged to my wife, Wendy, we kind of decided that, coaching was going to mean that we would probably have to move every 5 years, even if it went well, if I didn't get fired, which I probably would have. We just kind of decided that probably wasn't the best way. We had both grown up in the same house, all that stuff. And we kind of thought, well, that's what we should do. And so I just took a job as a lawyer and started hoofing it and trying to get into broadcasting. I figured that was a better route.
It'll be Duke in North Carolina at Cameron. We had a poll question where I said I could give you tickets to the national title game or tickets to tonight's game. McLovin, update the poll results.
62% want to go to the national title game.
Now, I said the game being at Duke, I'd rather see Duke, North Carolina at Cameron, a sure thing. The national title game will be in an antiseptic building in Minneapolis, in a dome, and I don't know who's going to be playing. Which one would you take?
I would take Duke, Carolina, Cameron, or I'd take it at the Smith Center. I'd love to go back to Carmichael, too. Where they used to play before the Smith Center opened in '86. But, the national championship game's great, but it's 70,000 people, and it's not a great atmosphere. It's just a great game. This is an unforgettable atmosphere. And, Dan, you've been there before. You can't describe the Duke Carolina atmosphere because the air is heavier, it's hotter. It's tangible. You can actually feel it in there, and it's unlike any other game. And I almost don't know how to describe it in words, but once you go through it, you'll never have another experience like it. And I think it's even different than playing at Carolina, which is just as loud. It's just bigger. But maybe because there's more air in that bigger place, it doesn't seem as hot. It doesn't seem as heavy. But the atmosphere inside of Cameron for the Carolina game is unlike anything else. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, and Coach K mentioned this yesterday at practice. He goes, "Do you remember?" He says to me, "Do you remember, how emotionally spent you'd be just when you got to opening tip because of the emotional energy and the toll it takes on you building up to the game." And when he said, "Do you remember?" I think he was taking a shot at how old I was. But, am I capable of remembering?
I was also wondering about this, Jay. At the beginning of the year, when ESPN sets their schedule, their broadcasting schedule, how strategic is it that you would have Duke, North Carolina, no NBA following the All-Star break, and it's on a Wednesday night, sort of a standalone? Is this on purpose, by design, by ESPN?
I have not thought about that. It didn't occur to me, Dan, until yesterday that this is the latest that Duke and Carolina have ever played, except one time when the game got snowed out and they had to postpone it for like 10 days. So they've never had their first game this late in the year. And I was listening to the radio earlier today, and a former Carolina player was asked about managing the day for a 9 o'clock game, and I started thinking about, well, I never played at 9 o'clock. I played 30 years ago, but our games were always in the afternoon on Saturday, either in the ACC tournament or regular season. We played in the afternoon. So it's even harder for these guys now because of television to manage all they have to manage. And I'm telling you, you wouldn't believe the buzz around here. It looks like the Super Bowl around Cameron with all the TV crews, all the celebrities that are here. It seems like this thing gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And just when you think, okay, it can't get any bigger than this, it gets bigger than that. And the tickets are, I was reading a little while ago on the internet, some of the tickets for tonight are going for $10,000 on Vivid. And the average price of a secondary market ticket is like $2,500 to $3,000.
Yeah, I got 3,100 is like the average, just your get-in price for this. Who are some of the luminaries that are expected to show up?
Well, Todd Gurley was there at practice yesterday, and by the way, if it gets much higher than 3,100, you could be hearing tonight Dan Schulman and some dude named Fred sitting in my seat.
You're going to sell your
yeah, pretty damn soon. It's going to be worth selling. But I've heard some rumors that President Obama may be here tonight. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the rumor I've heard.
You think you could take him one-on-one?
I know I could take him one-on-one, but it depends if his Secret Service guys are going to be screening for him, because those guys carry guns.
We're looking at this fascination with this Duke team, and I know you've said this on the air before. We've witnessed this, and I've said to the Danettes, it's one and done when you get to the tournament. It's different. If this was a best of 7, could anybody beat Duke in America in a best of 7?
No, they would win a best of 7. For Duke to lose, they have to have a bad shooting night and sort of get in foul trouble, or have something crazy happen, or have a performance like they had in the first 30 minutes against Louisville or something like that, where they run into a hot team. But that was a game on the road. I just don't see it, Dan. But, like you said, back in 2015, Kentucky was the best team. Back when I was an assistant, UNLV in 91 was the best team. They were undefeated, and they got clipped. So it can happen in that one-game scenario where you're the best team, and you may be the best team by far. But these guys are extraordinary. I mean, this is the best freshman class I've ever seen. It's clearly the best freshman class Coach K's ever had, and he's had some good ones. And it's not just their talent; they've got a maturity level that is that I can't fathom. To be this young, and then Zion puts it on a different level. I mean, this dude. People thought I was hyperbole, whatever you want to call it, overhyped when they said, well, how would you describe Zion Williamson? And my response was, oh my God. and people get it now. I think they get it. He's like putting a Mack truck in a ballet performance, and you go, hey, it works, man. This guy's good. This guy's good at this. You can't believe how nimble he is given his size and explosiveness. He's an incredible player, and the numbers he's putting up are historic. He's averaging like 24 a game in conference play, shooting 70%. It's crazy what he's doing, and I think he's going to get better when he starts shooting it better. How are you going to guard this guy? Like, if you don't crowd him, Dan,
yeah.
Like, let's say a non-shooter, you step off him a few steps and give him some space. He's taken up that space, and you got to crowd him like he could shoot it, because he'll take that space up and he'll be gone. You won't have any way of stopping him.
I was talking to Chris Webber, when you had the Fab Five at Michigan. He said, well, the difference with the Duke freshmen, they're not facing veteran teams. He said, when we came into college at Michigan, we're facing guys who had been in college for 2 or 3 years. Duke was a veteran team when they were facing them. So I know it's hard to compare and contrast, but, Weber does have a valid argument that team was just as talented because of what they were facing night in and night out, as opposed to Duke. Your best teams, you're probably facing one-and-doners.
So you think that this Duke team couldn't handle like Kevin Salvadori and Henrik Rodel and that group that
Henrik?
You don't think they could handle that?
No, I don't think they could.
Like, look, Chris Webber is a Hall of Famer, and to be able to say somebody is some class is as good as them, I don't think is insulting to them, because I do think the idea that everything in America gets better over time except basketball players, I find ridiculous. And I'll tell you one thing, like, I don't think any member of the Fab Five would entertain the idea that anybody before them was as good as they were. Do you think they would? Like, if you said, wait a minute, man, the freshman classes in the 1960s played against better players, and they played against guys that stuck around they would never entertain that. They would never listen to it. So the idea that 30 years later players are not or could not be better, the average player is better never. It's not. Well,
you can
close.
be better. You can be more talented. But I'm saying Michigan went against veteran teams where.
No, they actually didn't win. At this point in the season when Michigan played, they'd lost 8 games. And they didn't win the Big Ten those years they were there. They went to the title game twice. They were great. Like, nobody's arguing they weren't great. But the idea that these guys, like, it's not a crazy statement to say these guys are just as good, if not better, because I think they are. And when they have a body of work with them later on in their careers, when they're older, then people are going to realize just how freaking good these guys are. Because to have R.J. Barrett averaging 22, Zion averaging like 23, 24 in conference play. The last game they played, Zion had 32 against NC State, which has some veteran players, and R.J. Barrett had a triple-double. I mean, without a turnover. That just doesn't happen. That's extraordinary what these guys are doing. And look, I'm not trying to diminish in any way the Fab Five. What I'm trying to do is say just how good these guys are. It's historic, and I've never seen anything quite like it. It's crazy.
But, when the season started, I was watching Barrett, and he felt like he was, like a larger version of Harden. Like, he could get his shot outside, inside. But I also looked at the marketing of Zion Williamson, that I didn't know if he would be a better pro than R.J. Barrett. But as you've seen them develop in their freshman year, going into the NBA, is Zion obviously the best player you can market, but is he a better player going into the NBA than R.J. Barrett is?
That's the question. And I have not given up on the idea that R.J. Barrett would be the better number one pick. I don't know that I would do that, but I happen to think that he's built for the NBA. He's a much better shooter, and I think his shot is going to improve, kind of like Harden's did. If you remember when Harden came out of Arizona State, we weren't touting the fact that he was a great shooter. And he has certainly turned into that, and a spectacular offensive player. He could do everything. Well, this guy can too. And he rebounds his position. He can play the point. Ridiculously talented getting to the basket and finishing. And if he weren't playing with Zion Williamson, he'd be the lead story in everything we were doing this year. It's just Williamson is one of these very few times will you see somebody this extraordinarily talented and a guy that is truly unique that's taken all the air out of the room. And to his credit, Barrett has not 1 ounce of jealousy in him, which I think is extraordinary, that he was the presumptive number 1 pick coming into the season. Yeah. And now it seems like everybody's saying, no, it's not even close. It's Zion, which I don't agree with. I think it is close, but doesn't seem to bother R.J. Barrett one bit.
Have fun tonight, Jay, if you decide to go and take part in the broadcast.
Yeah, just like Antonio Brown, if you have an offer for my seat, hit my phone. Hit my phone.
Thank you, Jay. That's Jay Bilas, ESPN college basketball analyst.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.